Okay. Back to the baritone. The baritone build. Multi-scale baritone. I did the binding last night, and I'm getting buried alive in projects here. I don't know if any of you are following the Les Paul that was in a flood, but basically binding is melted in with acetone. There are glues out there, but they have acetone in there and other chemicals that literally melt the ABS into whatever you're binding it to. So it's kind of a rodeo ride. You kind of just splash it and try to control as much as you can. But we're gonna see how this came out. And I have this little contraption I made up that kind of wedge everything together. I line with wax paper because, you know, the stuff melts and it'll stick to anything. You don't want it sticking to your form. But this little guy holds the fingerboard down. You know, it's a thin piece of wood. It wants to cup and twist. You want to hold it flat. So I might, depending on what the wood's doing, have these all through it. It only needed one on the end with a little wedge. And ancient clamps. All my clamps are being used, so let's see what we got here. Pull those out. Well, it's staying so far. Kind of. Let's see. I might have to redo that. Looks like I didn't get it too good in there. And if there's little gaps like that, and you could take more strips of binding material. The binding stuck to that wood more than it stuck to this wood. You could fill in any little gaps. You melt little binding shavings into a cup. And we're gonna have to reattach that better into a cup, and you kind of paint it into little voids to fill it with binding material. It's a weird thing, binding is. So we don't want to bump that. I'm gonna set that right off the edge. Take these screws out. You can see I've used it so many times and had to make new holes. So every time you tighten it, it's just soft pine. The screw goes a little deeper every time, so next time maybe I'll go here and then eventually there, and then have to make a new board. So, even though it's on wax paper, we'll just go like this. Take a razor blade, cut that little bugger, get that out of our way. And this stuff can make a mess. No doubt about it. You know, it's basically melting liquefied plastic when you're working with it. Man, let's see. It's stuck somewhere. Lift it out of there. You don't want to rip the binding back off. It's stuck to the tape. Painter tape. It just melts to everything. You can kind of see the little melted areas around there. And now this fingerboard, as I mentioned in another video, which you may or may not post with this one, these get little fret nibs. And this one being a multi-scale, I might have to take these out by hand. The baritone fingerboard's a lot of hand work involved. These frets have to be cut by hand. I use a fret saw that has a stop on it that's adjustable for how deep, it'll go so deep and then stop. And these have to be scalloped, follow the frets around, because the binding's gonna come up around the ends of the frets. And that's, I can't do that on the router table because the router bit goes straight up and down and the frets are in an angle and graduate. These make really nice necks. They're easy to play. People look, is it awkward to play? And after about 10 seconds, like, oh my gosh, I get it. This is fantastic. So there you have it. Those are baritone multi-scale fingerboard so far. This is a lot of material to remove with a file, and it does on that scale. It kind of clogs the file, and it's a lot of work. This is a multi-scale, and what I normally do is use this little guy on the router table, and this ball bearing is right in line with the cutters. It cuts flush, and this ball bearing rides on the fingerboard and follows the frets. Bump, bump, bump. The problem is the router table is straight up and down, and these frets are in an angle, so it'll overcut there. But if we're really careful, I could avoid that and just get the majority of product out, but you can see that it could actually cut into the fret, and the bearings are already hitting that one. I might just kind of use this, even if I just get in the middle where the frets are straight up and down. It's a lot of material. I'll just remove what I can and be real careful. Let's change that bit and do it. Okay, I have our bit, so it isn't riding way up on the wood. And if you think about it, if you have it way up here and you have it at an angle like that, you're going to be cutting into the wood. You want that cutter on the binding, and that bearing will just ride around. When I built this router table, the whole case is an enclosed box, and the bottom is like a funnel. I have a great big, like a 4-inch dust collection tube. I put this ring in. I have smaller ones. I could put a tiny one in, but for the dust collection, this makes for a nice velocity. It pulls the little particles right down. Most of them. This stuff gets statically charged, and it's worse than packaging peanuts. So you want that sucked right out of the way, because it makes a mess. And here in this light, you could see where the plastic actually, you see those bubbles, like it melted from the acetone. And there's no glue used. It's all acetone. This is melted in. And you could even see a couple spots here where it melted up onto the wax paper. But, and it's a little bit of a rough edge, and it gets scraped and sanded and filed, and there's a bit of work that goes into binding. You might not realize, but I love it. It just makes for a nice, comfortable feeling neck, and it's kind of classy if it could be done good. Okay. You could tell in both cases I started going in the wrong direction. I'm used to using the overhead for shaping my necks, my bodies. I've been using it so much. These spin in a direction, and if you're on this side, you know, you want to go this way. If you're on this side, you want to go that way. And I got changed around, but kind of funny. But you want to pay attention to the direction you're going. And there's still a bit to remove, but it just made quick work of a big task ahead with a file. So that came out good. I didn't hit any of the frets with that cutter. And I do have some glue to clean up. I do use a CA glue when I press my frets in, so there's no empty voids. Isn't necessary to glue the frets in, it's just it keeps moisture out, and hopefully the frets won't pop ever. And now I'm just taking a file and following that fret and taking out the bulk. And yes, I'm going against the grain of the wood. I'll take care of that earlier. I find you know, I have a lot of files, and this one is aggressive enough to take the binding down, but mild enough to not tear the wood up, and it just leaves a nice edge. It just use it like a straight edge, and it follows the fret right around that corner. Does a nice crisp job. I do have, you know, this file won't fit, and as I get up here, keep other small files when we get up there. They don't work as fast as this one, but they get in between the frets. Okay, that's time consuming. It gets to your wrist, but you can see it brighten up. Yeah, we have fuzzies all over. That gets cleaned up later. And the files actually leave a really nice, if you use the right ones, they're actually kind of machinist files, I mean, for steel and whatnot, but they leave a really nice edge, and they don't tear up. This is real abalone shell, and it takes to this process really, really nice. So next, if you look, our binding didn't come all the way down on the fingerboard. So we're gonna have to put it back in the jig and add strips to the bottom of that and melt that in. And see, the fingerboard was kind of cupped, and I should have had the middle pressed down. I had the end clamped, but didn't have the metal clamped, and I'll have to do that in the future. I have the luxury of natural light, which just reveals everything. I built this shop with that in mind, and it literally, it just has tall ceilings with windows all the way around, and you know, my tools are all right over my shoulder, you know, easy access to everything, and I'm really fortunate, and it was the best move I made building this place. And I don't have to mow the yard anymore, at least in the back. Okay, so we have our fingerboard glued on. I didn't bother videotaping that. That's somewhat straightforward. And what I like to use, I made these up on the table saw. I have a video on that where I run it, you know, the blade's this big around, you want to make a circle that big around, and I run it past the blade on an angle. And this being a baritone, the neck's a little longer, so I have a few of them, and what I do is the simple wax paper, and you know, it protects everything from getting glue all over it. But I have several that could go like that. Okay, and I think I included a picture of all these different clamps. You know, I have to use what I have on hand, and I actually have hockey tape pulled really tight to get it held in place, and then I could start clamping. And I also use in this case plywood would be better, but in this case I just used a piece of soft wood, because you want this, you want to try to keep this straight, so it doesn't matter if you have C clamps and other type of clamps. You know, you use what you have on hand and what you could afford, but you want it even across here. Another thing I do is a little tiny little, like for the side dot markers, the cream little, every once in a while I intentionally leave them exposed. You could do and press this fret in afterwards if you're not doing the little fret nibs like I did here, or an offender style neck. I hide these under where the nut's gonna go, or you could just do one here, one, you know, under a dot. And this is real abalone, and this stuff, this is after filing and being sanded on our sander to that diameter. This is a 16-inch radius neck, and there's no polishing done to those. That's just from a metal file. Cleaning in between these left those really, really nice. But this is a multi-scale baritone. And what else am I forgetting? If I'm forgetting anything, or you have any comments, you know, you could post questions in the comments below. I don't mind at all. But this being a baritone, it does have a longer truss rod, which I ordered, but it came out really, really good. And you don't have to do registers. You can, I have sprinkled, you know, just a few grains of salt, give it some bite so it isn't slipping around. But by the time you get, you know, everything wrapped around it, and you know, if you use wax paper and whatever you're using on top, you know, you just want to know for sure that it's there. And then when it comes out, it's in line with your neck. And binding is nice for blending in. You could literally come back with even a common chisel and blend that in. I like to go this way because the neck's tapering, and if anything, the grains, it's almost like you're combing the grain down. If you go this way, you might gouge into the wood. I mean, you still can, you know, wood grain goes all over the place, but I use that would typically be used on steel, a metal file, so it keeps that straight edge. And you could use sandpaper, but this one came out nice. But now I do most of my carving afterwards to blend everything in. You know, I had it ballparked on this guy here to get most of the bulk out, and now I'll make it kind of match this side. So I might come and with my gouge chisels, and I might take it in something like that and make it kind of meld in, kind of like how it does on this side. And I still have some work to do here. And I did have a lot of glue squeeze out, and because the bridges I use, the neck has to come in at a pitch, at an angle, so this is always sticking way up, and you have to be really careful and kind of, you know, take that down and level it off with the body. Pickup is going here. So anyhow, Like I said, any questions you have, this is just how I do, one of several ways I do it. There's probably a million ways to do this, but whatever works where you're not grinding an area of frets down to flatness. And this is really, really good. And I tend to file my right around in this area, put just the tiniest bit of slope onto my fingerboard. A lot of people like really low action these days, and that's one way to get it. Well, thanks for watching.